I don't know exactly what they do down there.
Like, I never really realized, like, it can be, like, that harmful. I just thought, like, there's pollution everywhere.
I say that it smells like perm solution.
Sometimes smell like a sweeter type, bitter type smell.
We wanted to take a look at the impact of industrial pollution on schools around the country. Kids are particularly susceptible to the impact of industrial pollution, and very little is known about how toxic chemicals might affect their health. So we took EPA data and a government model, and we overlaid the locations of about 128,000 schools. It's a task that the government has never tried to do. What we found were high levels of dangerous chemicals that appeared outside a lot of schools around the country. Now, it's only a model, but the model does tell us where toxic hotspots are and which schools might be there. Meredith Hitchens Elementary School is located along the Ohio River in a town outside Cincinnati called Addiston, Ohio. And in 2005, the Ohio EPA was called in and asked to do some monitoring on the roof of the school. What they found were very high levels of toxic chemicals, so high that they said the risk of cancer there was about 50 times above what the state considered acceptable.
We had a facility directly across from the school where we're sitting that had a variety of upsets and accidents in a year, 2004. When we found these high concentrations, we found they yielded unacceptable results compared to the health-based standards that the Ohio EPA uses.
As a consequence, the district decided to act fast. They got the kids out of the school, closed the school down.
We now know that a lot of diseases are triggered by early exposures, but it takes years, even decades, for those diseases to progress from the early exposure to the actual manifestation of a disease like cancer.
Immediately after our legal orders against this facility, the air became cleaner, and since then has had some improvements in air quality. We're still working to secure the long-term a guarantee of air quality in the area.
Part of the reason we wanted to use the EPA model is because it creates a ranking system that compares one site to another. It's also part of the reason we wanted to look at Meredith Hitchens. We knew from the 7 months of monitoring that the Ohio EPA did what was in the air outside that school. And we know from the model that when we rank that school against others, we get an accurate representation of those that are worse and those that are likely better. And what we ended up finding were about 435 schools where the air outside appeared to actually be worse than the school in Ohio that was shut down.
The approach used by USA Today was to take the modeling data and rank schools across the country in terms of what their health risk might be.
Part of the reason we decided to go out and do snapshot monitoring of air at some of these schools was because the government wasn't.
There has to be a thorough investigation beyond just the modeling approach.
We worked with Johns Hopkins University and the School of Public Health at the University of Maryland to come up with a way of gathering data from schools around the country. One of the things we did was to do, as we call, snapshot monitoring, where we might spend 5 days outside a school with various apparatus collecting samples of the air, then sending those samples to the lab to be analyzed. In Midland and a host of other towns, it's not surprising that residents might not see problems or might think that this isn't related to industries in the areas. Part of what's so insidious about air pollution is that the problems that show up might not come for decades later.
One of the things I worry about as a pediatrician is that children are much more vulnerable, much more susceptible to toxic chemicals than adults.
They may be breathing things early on in their lives that don't manifest until 20, 30 years later.
How do you know that a child is being exposed? And the answer to that question is, in many cases, you don't know. Because if the exposures are at relatively low levels, they may be causing damage in the child. They may be causing mutations in a child's cells that begin the pathway to cancer.
Experts who have looked at what we did say that parents shouldn't be alarmed, but they should be concerned. They should start asking questions, both of their school district and of the companies that are located nearby. They should try to find out what's in the air. And the experts say that they can contact advocacy groups, they can contact state environmental agencies, they can contact their school officials, that these are questions that they ought to ask and answers they should get.